Hi, I'm Leanne Ely. I'm a nutritionist, a New York Times best-selling author, and some people even say I'm a life coach. I started the Daily Dish Show to share my story, my truth, and my journey to vibrancy, and to inspire others to do the same. Because it's all about grit, perseverance, and finding a way despite the odds. It's about embracing the whole woman, not just the parts that are easy to love, and feeding her heart, mind, body, and soul. But I found that this isn't just my story, it's your story too. It's go time. This is the Daily Dish. Well, hello, good afternoon, everybody. Yay! Pink hands, Catherine, Patsy. Good to have you here, Nancy. We get together today. How about that? I'm so excited about today's show topic. It's something I sure need to hear. So I hope I'm not just preaching to this choir here, but I sure hope that this kind of lands with something that you need to hear. Anyway, the other thing is we have, let's see. Oh, Jackie, good grief. It's good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. And Anne is here as well. So that's good. We're having a good old time. We also are having an incredible buy one, get one sale on beauty support. If you are a beauty support fan, then you know exactly why you want to have beauty support in your life. Am I right? Trish, hello. And the reason why is because as we get older, anybody besides me getting older? As we get older, we lose our ability for a lot of things. And one of those is making collagen. Hi, Jocelyn. Making collagen. You know, when we were younger, we'd make it all the time. As we get older, the ability to make it diminishes. So guess what we get to do instead? We get to take a supplement that helps us make it. And it helps us to make it so that we are now producing more collagen than we used to. And if we're also drinking it in bone broth and we're also taking it in with our perfect paleo protein, can you imagine what that's doing for your skin, your hair, your nails, your bones, your joints, all of it? It's pretty crazy. So get on it. It's buy one, get one free. Buy one, get one. That's a $49 value. You can find it at savingdinner.com/beauty support. Make sure beauty support is all one word. And you'll find it right there. All you have to do is enter it into your cart, boom, and we will send you that extra bottle absolutely free. Do you love that or what? Hello, Deborah. Good to have you here. All righty. So, and I apologize. My text messages have just been going bonkers right now. So if you hear ding, 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 you'll know that they're talking to me and I'm not listening. Because I'm listening to you. I'm here with you. So we have beauty support, and boy, do we have a quote of the week. This is one that maybe you need to hear. This is one I needed to hear because it's this quote is from Anonymous. Every positive change in your life begins with a clear, unequivocal decision that you're either going to start something or you're going to stop something. Boom, that's the mic drop. Isn't that the truth? Have you noticed that to be the case? That you remember the moment that you made that decision, the moment that you just said, this time it's going to be different. This time I'm not wavering. This time I am not making just a simple choice. I am making a clear decision. And I'm not moving from that decision. It is going to get hard. It is going to test me. It's going to be difficult. But it's not going to put me in the place of surrendering to what I've always done. Because I know that doesn't work. I just love this quote, and I just think it's brilliant, and it's something, I'm sorry, but we all need to hear it. You know, we're all guilty of quitting on ourselves. We're all guilty of being in that place of saying, yeah, let's go, and then poof, gone. You know that if you have been in our sprint group for any period of time, people come and people go. They're here, they're not. They come back, then they come, then they're gone. Come back and gone. And the interesting thing is that when we are decided for the consistency of saying either yes or no, that's when the results come. That's when we get to see these goals come to fruition. And I will tell you, if you want to see more proof of that, go into the group and go read our lovely Tanya's story, because she's 1,000 days and plus into it, right? Anyway. So speaking of surrender, today we're going to talk about surrender. Well, hello, Jane. It's so good to see you. I'm glad you're here. And I today, as we talk about surrender, I want you to please keep a little bit of an open mind, and this and start just thinking in terms of, well, what does that exactly mean? What does that exactly mean to me? So you remember the Wizard of Oz, right? You remember the Wizard of Oz when the Wicked Witch of the West wrote in the sky, "Dorothy, surrender." And you remember Dorothy looking up in the sky and seeing that, and her posse as well. And they just were quaking out of fear. But it didn't stop them. It didn't deter them from what it was that they were trying to accomplish. They had to get to Oz. They had a goal. They had made a decision about it, and they were set on it. They had grit, not quit, even in face of the fear, even in face of the difficulty that they knew was ahead. So we've all been guilty, right? Like I said, of quitting on ourselves. But today what we're going to be talking about is different, because there are times when surrender is appropriate. There are times when we need to get out of the way and get into flow so that we stop being the impediment to the progress in our lives. I'm telling you, it's true. And we can become an impediment in our lives. And so we need to be looking at the difference of what quitting on ourselves is and actually giving into this thing called surrender. And let's kind of look at it, because this is a different concept and we have to have a completely different lens. Otherwise, we're going to, it's going to drive us just a little bit batty and going, well, should I or shouldn't I? There's different answers for different reasons. Okay, so let's get into it. In psychological and emotional terms, surrender refers to the process of letting go and of trying to control different situations. Hi, Alice, by the way. And if you have ever been in this situation where you've tried to control the outcome of something or somebody else's decision or something that was definitely not in your control, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you've ever had a kid go a little bit astray and you're just thinking of what else can I do? It's at that moment that we choose surrender, because there is nothing left to do. We can't control every situation. We cannot control the outcomes of everything. There are things as human beings that are beyond our control. And this is the place where it is appropriate to put in surrender. And my belief is, as we surrender, we are giving it up to God. And we're saying to him, I trust you. I need you. I believe in you. It's yours. I'm done trying to manipulate. I'm done trying to micromanage. I'm done trying to trick and whatever it is that I needed to do to try to make something happen. I could tell you story after story where this has been true and where I have finally given up and surrendered and found that place of flow. So what we need to do is understand too that, again, we're not talking about giving up responsibility or effort, but rather accepting things for what they are. And it's tough. It's a tough concept, because we are the ones, especially as parents, we are the ones, we see the possibilities, we see the potential in someone, for example, who we might think is throwing their lives away. But when we give this up, when we surrender, we're giving up also resistance. We're giving up the struggle, and we're giving up control and saying to the one who made us, you've got this. I apparently don't. And it's okay. And there is a release as we do this. And I will say, it's counterintuitive, isn't it? Because we want the very best especially when we're talking about kids. We want the very best for them. We want the very best for the best outcome, the best results, etc. But this idea of battling through all this adversity and to keep going oftentimes brings us to the brink of losing our own sanity, our own peace, our own quiet enjoyment of life, because we're so bound and determined to keep this under our control, and it just doesn't work. So interestingly enough, because I looked it up, there is science to back up that surrendering can be incredibly powerful and beneficial to the one who's making the surrender. Do you want to dig into it? I sure hope so, because I think it's really cool. Well, first of all, we need to understand why. Why does surrender work when nothing else did, right? Why? Well, number one, it's going to reduce many aspects of stress and anxiety, okay? Because when we're trying to control the uncontrollable, it puts undue pressure on us, oftentimes the people around us, the person or the situation or circumstance that we might be trying to control. And what we found is that with surrender, it reduces those feelings. It makes us feel, it makes us shift our focus to what we can't control to what we can actually influence, which is a complete difference. And that's going to decrease our cortisol levels and enhance our overall well-being. And if you get the show notes, you're going to see every single one of these things that I'm talking about all has studies connected with it. So you can go look it up. That's kind of cool. Number two, it improves our psychological flexibility. This is crucial. Remember, we've talked about this before. Blessed are the flexible, they will not be broken. This is absolutely crucial, because when we hang all of our hopes and dreams on this one thing happening, and we're watching it slowly slip away, our psychologically, we feel like we're going to be broken. And that's not good for our sanity. It's not good for our lives, the people in our lives. It's not good for our health, for heaven's sakes. So this concept of psychological flexibility means that we're accepting our thoughts and feelings and committing to actions that align with our values, even in the face of difficult or unwanted circumstances or experiences. Now, this is research in acceptance and commitment therapy. I didn't even know there was such a thing, but there is. And it shows that this adaptability is linked to better mental health incomes, greater life satisfaction, and enhanced well-being. Again, footnotes on all of these particular studies. Isn't that cool? Hi, Doris, Alice. It also, number three, encourages mindfulness and present moment living. And we've talked about this endlessly, because when we are in the present and not fussing about what could happen in the future or wringing our hands over what happened in the past, we can be fully present. And that encourages this mindfulness, and it encourages a deeper look at what our conversations are, what our relationships are, because we're not left in that place of hand-wringing, because we can hand-wring over our past and our future. But if we don't live in our present, we lose it. And we're not fully present. We're not fully there. We're not having the deep conversation. We're not making those connections. And we lose in a big way. So listen, where do you think this depression and anxiety comes from? Most of it comes from living in the past and grimacing about what happened and trying to figure out what I could have done different, when in fact, speaking of surrender, there is not a dang thing that you can do about that. Or worrying about what's going to happen in the future. But here's something else that's interesting. We get improved cognitive function when we're losing the anxiety, when we're losing the depression, and when we are being mindful and present in the moment. Being mindful and present in the moment is one of the best mental health things that you can do for yourself. It encourages healthy. It encourages healthy thoughts. It encourages letting go. It encourages better connections, deeper relationships. It's unbelievable. And not just with others, but also with yourself. So how do you surrender? Well, there's all kinds of ways, and it doesn't involve skywriting, by the way. No, it does not. The first thing you need to do is acknowledge what you can't control. You know, AA, they get together and they say the serenity prayer, you know, and the first thing is about accepting things that they can't, that they have no control over. And I don't remember exactly what I had it earlier in my head, but I don't remember it now. But you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's a big deal, because that is the reality of where you are. That is the reality of what the situation is. And so when we identify these aspects that are beyond our control and acknowledge our feelings about them, that's a big relief. That's just like, phew, okay. Because a lot of times this is unspoken, that we're trying to control the situation. What we're doing is racking our brains and trying to think of what's next, and who can I call, and what can I do, and how can I make this situation better? Most of the time, we have to just let it go and acknowledge that we have feelings about that. There's nothing wrong with that, and I get it. You know, I've had a teenage boy that completely out of control. You know, I have him coming at the end of the month. I'm thrilled. I can't wait for him to get here so I can hug on him. You know, that big whopping 6'4" young man. But my relationship with him wasn't like that before. My relationship with him 20 years ago, when I think about it, 20 years ago, he was 14. Wait, 13. How old is he? No, he was 12. But, 15 years ago when he was a teenager. Oh, it was hell. It was hell on earth. And I wasn't in that place. There it is. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Isn't that beautiful? And it's so true. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. This is how you surrender. We got to start with acknowledging, though. We have to start with accepting, don't we? And when we do, and when we let go, that's when things start to change. And I'll tell you, I went through that whole thing, and I did let go, and he came back to me. He came back. And it wasn't because of anything manipulative and genius idea that I had. It's because I surrendered and said, okay, he's got to do what he has to do. And so do I. There is nothing wrong with putting yourself into the equation, by the way. You count too. Number 2 is to focus on the present, Again, engage in these mindfulness practices. Be present. Be fully into the conversation, and not just to hear so that you can insert your conversation into the conversation, waiting for the other person to take a pause. You ever been with somebody who's like that, or you done it yourself? That's not a conversation. That's not fully, wholeheartedly listening to someone else. That's not being in it. So if you can concentrate on your breath and immerse yourself in where you are and in your current activity fully, you'll find yourself in a whole different place. You'll find yourself making deeper and better connections and being able to do the letting go. Because that's the big deal, I can't even tell you, when I've been coaching clients for over 20 years. And sometimes we get into stuff, and if you've been in any of my classes and done hot seats, we get into stuff, you got to get into the stuff. In order to sort the stuff, you got to get into it, right? And what I have found is that when we are willing to engage like this and immerse ourselves into the present, then we are going to get a different outcome, because we're able to surrender. And when we surrender, we're able to go with the flow. And I'm not just saying whoop-de-doo, being very, cavalier about it and just like whatever. It's not that way at all. It's after a lot of thinking. It's after a lot of pondering. It's after a lot of soul searching that you come to this place of surrender. And then the other thing that we need to do next, number 3, is to cultivate acceptance. Now, I love this word cultivate, because cultivating means that it isn't just a one-time thing. When you cultivate a garden, you start with seeds, you work the soil, you give it the right amount of water, you know all the deals, you pull out the weeds. So when we're cultivating acceptance, we're practicing accepting our current experience without trying to change it. And I'm going to tell you something, as someone who's been there, done that, and gotten the t-shirt many, many times in that, it's going to be more than, it's not a one-time situation. You're going to have to do it again and again and again, because then the thoughts will creep up. But then you say, no, I made a decision about that. And the decision is X, Y, and Z. Now, let me just say this, and again, back to coaching people, for me, and just myself too, it doesn't mean that you approve of what they're doing and that you're putting your shiny stamp of approval on them at all. It doesn't mean that. It's rather you are seeing the situation and recognizing it for what it is and accepting it, still loving and still accepting. I had a friend whose child did something, was gay. She didn't like it, didn't jive with her church, didn't jive with everything, and went through all this stuff, did a whole, I can't even tell you all the stuff that they did. But at the end of the day, it came down to accepting their son for who he was and loving him anyway. That didn't mean they approved of him. He didn't need their approval. He needed their love. Those were his parents, right? And when you have a collision of values, it doesn't mean that you have to give up your values. It just means that sometimes we have to park them in a different parking lot. And sometimes we have to come to the place and say, I love you anyway. And let's just leave that aside. That's it. That's how that whole thing works. Now, some of you aren't going to agree with me and say, well, no, this is how it goes. This is how it is at my church. This is how we do this, that, or the other thing. And I'm not telling you what to do. I'm merely suggesting that oftentimes when we find ourselves in this place, we can cultivate this whole welcoming, if you will, acceptance of who that person is, even when we don't align with what they are about. Does that make sense? I'm going to stop now. Otherwise, I know I'm going to get myself in trouble. I feel strongly about this, though. You don't get, for whatever divine reason, that's your child. And you have the opportunity to love that child as they are with all their foibles. And they love you as you are with all your foibles. You don't have to put the stamp of approval on it, but you do get to, as the privilege that you have of being their parent, you get to love them anyway. That's surrendering right there. That's surrendering, because you might feel strongly about something, but it doesn't mean that you need to impinge your values on them and reject them because of it. I think that's really, really sad. And it isn't the definition of what I understand to be love at all. That's just me. Number 4 is you have to engage in value-driven action. And that means you have to identify what's truly important to you. Take actions that align with your values, okay? Take actions that align with your values without running the other person over, of course. And regardless of the uncontrollable circumstances, this is the thing that you just have to do. That's how we roll, right? That's how we roll. So when do you surrender, right? When do you surrender? When do you stay the course, and when do you surrender? Well, here's a couple of things. And they're pretty obviously what's going on. When your continual effort causes suffering, it's time to back away. It's time to stop. It's time to say, this change of control of situation is only leading to increased stress for you, increased stress for me, anxiety, pain. There's a tear in our relationship, there's whatever else, it's time to consider letting it all go. It's time to considering what's the most valuable thing here, right? I also have I have some friends who have different political points of view. That close to getting a divorce. Can you imagine? Over politics. Over politics. Maybe it's time to consider letting go of the political talk, turning off the news shows, and watching a funny movie instead. This is what I'm talking about. We cannot control what the other person is going to think, and you cannot debate your way into a place of making them see what you see. And they can't do it to you either. And that's why when we surrender and let these things go, what we're doing is we're granting them peace and ourselves peace as well. That's huge. That's huge. That's when we start to become whole again. That's when we realize that whatever it is, it will get worked out. And we also need to surrender when we're facing unchangeable circumstances. That's going to happen. Sometimes there's situation or outcomes that are way out of our control. The behavior of others, certain health conditions, natural events. I had another friend who was in Thailand. Remember when they had the big tsunami? Awful, awful, scarred for life. And they went, can't even really talk about it, but I heard bits and pieces of the story. Both of them survived, husband and wife. Both of them survived, but barely. They got pushed underwater. They got separated. It was just like listening. It was like listening to them talk about a movie they saw, but it was happening to them. This is the thing. But they have made a decision to move forward because of it. I think they've done some talks and stuff like that at their church or whatever. But they made a decision about it that this was an event that happened and it doesn't need to scar us for life. We can remove ourselves from that and say, okay, this happened, but it's not my current day situation. A tsunami's not going to be coming here and running me over. The other thing is when you surrender, it's to enhance your well-being. Your well-being. When you have the pursuit of control taking its toll on your well-being, you got to take a look at that. You got to take a look at that. So often we put ourselves very dead last, and we're thinking about everything else and controlling every single situation. It's almost like the Wizard of Oz with all his levers and everything. And it's a big facade. It's a big facade because you aren't that big scary monster, but you're trying to put that through with trying to control the whole situation. Oh my gosh, this phone, I can't even tell you. Surrendering is a nuanced concept, and it involves recognizing when to hold them and when to fold them. You ever hear that one before? When you're holding on to a situation for dear life and you're white knuckling your way through, it's counterproductive to the outcome that you want. And what we do is get so attached to an outcome that we can't even see our way toward what it is that we truly want, which is peace, vibrancy, and a fully bloomed life. And we get to be the ones who are plugged into this equation as well, so that our lives have the deep meaning as well. It's not just all about the situation. It's about finding strength in this type of vulnerability. You get peace from acceptance and clarity and understanding of what you can change and what you just have to let go of. So when we surrender, we often give up. We gain more than we give up. We get our peace back. We get clarity, and we get the freedom to move forward in a way that aligns with our own values, right? Even if they're not aligned with them. And we get to not only align with our deepest values, but we get to align again with our truest self. Because when we are in pursuit of something that we cannot change, we lose ourselves in the process. And you cannot be lost in the process of trying to manipulate a situation, people, places, things, etc., and keep your peace, keep your vibrancy. It just doesn't work. So the next time you find yourself in a situation where you're just horrified of what's going on with whatever it is, sit back and make a determination. Do I need to make a decision to surrender this to God or pursue it all the way to the end? It's up to you. And my vote for you is that you would surrender it and just let God. He doesn't mess things up, y'all. Promise. Pinkies up. All right. That's all we have for today. Love you guys. I really appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for showing up. Don't forget about this week's special. It's beauty support. Beauty support. Buy one, get one. I mean, that's a great deal. Don't forget about the show notes. Don't forget about all the other stuff. Blah, 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 blah. And if you are part of our book club for the Recreate Your Life journal and all of that, don't forget, you better be reading Forever Strong. It's coming up. I'm so excited. All right. Peace be with you. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining me today. You can find me on TikTok for daily tips to help support your most vibrant life. And remember, you are the author of your own story. Until next time.